There's a certain kind of quiet you get in a neighborhood like ours, the kind where the trees rustle like they've got secrets, and the biggest excitement of the week is when the mailman accidentally drops someone else's catalog into your box. That's how I like it, calm, predictable, and peaceful. My son, Tyler, had been counting down to his 7th birthday for months. Not because he wanted the latest gadget or something flashy. No, he just wanted balloons, chocolate cake with blue frosting, and to invite a few school friends over for games in the backyard. It was the first real birthday party we'd thrown since we moved here, and the boy was glowing brighter than the string lights I'd wrapped around the patio. The morning of his birthday, I was up early, inflating balloons until my fingers ached and hanging banners that spelled "Happy Birthday, Tyler" across our backyard fence. My wife was in the kitchen, frosting cupcakes and humming, and Tyler was running around in a paper crown, laughing with his cousins who'd come in from out of town. It was the kind of morning you wish you could bottle up and save forever. Around noon, families started trickling in, neighbors, school friends, a couple of his classmates' parents. We weren't throwing some wild bash. There was no DJ, no loud music, no bouncy castles screaming air through the suburbs. Just kids playing tag, soft music from a Bluetooth speaker, and parents sipping lemonade on lawn chairs. It was exactly the kind of party that would have made Norman Rockwell proud. But peace has a way of attracting trouble, and in our neighborhood, that trouble wears a pastel cardigan and goes by the name Karen Montgomery. Now, Karen lives 3 doors down and fancies herself the guardian of our street's aesthetic harmony, which is a pretentious way of saying she likes sticking her nose where it doesn't belong. She's the self-appointed HOA vice president, a position nobody voted her into, mind you, and she treats the HOA rules like gospel. I've seen her wag a finger at kids for riding bikes too fast and file formal complaints about wind chimes being too whimsical. So when Karen's Lexus slowly rolled past our house around 1:30 p.m., my stomach dropped a little. At first, she didn't get out. She just sat in her car with her sunglasses on, watching. Like a hawk staring at a field mouse, except the mouse was a group of 7-year-olds playing duck duck goose. Then, she stepped out. In one hand, she held her phone. In the other, a clipboard. You'd think she was conducting a property inspection instead of crashing a child's birthday. "Excuse me," she said, marching right up to where I stood by the grill. "Do you have a permit for this gathering?" "A permit?" I blinked. "It's a birthday party. For my son." Karen gave a tight, dry smile. "That doesn't mean you're above the rules. This constitutes an outdoor event, and per HOA guidelines, all group functions must be approved in advance." I looked around. There were 20, maybe 25 people top. Mostly parents. No alcohol. No loudspeakers. Just kids having fun in the backyard. "Karen," I said slowly, trying to stay calm, "we've lived here 2 years. We've never had a single complaint. This is just a backyard party." "Well, now you've had a complaint," she snapped. With that, she raised her phone and dialed 911. Right there in front of everyone. Parents stared in disbelief. The kids stopped playing. Even the dog seemed to pause and tilt his head like, "Wait, is this real?" "Yes, I'd like to report an unauthorized gathering." "Yes." "Children. Loud. Disruptive. It's a public nuisance," she said into the phone, as if she were reporting a riot. I'll admit, I lost my breath for a second. I walked over, tried to reason with her. "Karen, this is unnecessary. Please. You're embarrassing yourself and upsetting the kids." "You're the one breaking the rules," she hissed. "And don't you dare raise your voice at me, I know my rights. I am the HOA. That was the moment I looked over and saw Tyler standing by the birthday table, his paper crown crooked, his smile gone. His tiny fists were balled up at his sides, and his eyes were shiny with tears he was trying so hard to blink away. That did it for me. Not the phone call, not the HOA threat, not the entitled tone or the smug glare. It was the look on my boy's face. Within 10 minutes, a police cruiser pulled up, lights flashing, but no sirens. The 2 officers who got out looked confused. One of them, Officer Reynolds, had clearly responded to Karen's calls before. He had that look of someone walking into déjà vu he didn't ask for. After a quick scan of the party, he walked over to Karen and asked for clarification. She pointed toward the children like they were a gang of looters. That one was screaming, and that one threw a ball that landed in the sidewalk. And the music, there's music. The second officer looked toward the speaker on the patio playing a soft instrumental version of Happy Birthday. He raised an eyebrow. Officer Reynolds turned to me and said, "Sir, everything seems fine here. I'm sorry this call disrupted your event." I nodded, biting my tongue. "No worries, officer. We appreciate you stopping by." Karen tried to interject, but Reynolds stopped her. "Ma'am, unless there's a safety concern, you shouldn't be calling emergency services for personal grievances. This is a child's birthday party." Karen looked like someone had just told her the world was flat. She sputtered a few words, then stormed off, mumbling about violations and city ordinances and lawyer friends. But the damage was done. The energy had shifted. A few parents made early exits, unsure what might happen next. Tyler tried to enjoy the rest of his party, but the magic had been stolen. He barely touched his cake. When we tucked him in that night, he whispered, "Did I do something wrong, Dad?" That question carved a hole in me. I kissed his forehead and made a silent promise to myself. Karen wanted to play games? Fine. But next time, she'd be the one center stage. And she'd wish she never messed with a 7-year-old's birthday. You'd think after a public embarrassment like that, Karen would have had the decency to walk away quietly, maybe even reflect on how ridiculous it was to call the police on a child's birthday party. But you don't know Karen. The very next morning, before the balloons had even fully deflated and before we'd cleaned the melted frosting off the patio, we got an official email from the HOA. Subject line: Formal noise complaint and citation, unpermitted gathering at address. There it was, clear as daylight. A formal notice, with our names printed in bold, claiming we violated Section 4.2b of the HOA Noise Ordinance and Section 3.7a, Event Permitting Procedure. Apparently, according to Karen's documentation, the event had disturbed the peace, posed a safety hazard, and upset the neighborhood's established visual and auditory standards. Auditory standards. For a kid's birthday party. With cupcakes. Now here's the part that lit the fuse for me. In the notice, it said we were being fined $275 and warned that further violations may lead to legal action, community service mandates, or escalation to county code enforcement. Let me repeat. Legal action, community service, county code enforcement for a 7-year-old's birthday. I'd expected maybe a snide comment, maybe a nasty look at the grocery store, but this was Karen escalating, and I wasn't about to let her bulldoze us without consequence. Still, I tried one last time to be civil. My wife, bless her heart, urged me to take the high road. "Just talk to her," she said. "Maybe she had a bad day." So I walked down the street to her pale yellow house with its overly trimmed hedges and a sign that read, "This home is protected by HOA Watch." I knocked on the door. No answer. Knocked again. Nothing. Just when I was about to leave, the blinds shifted. I could feel her watching. "Karen," I said calmly, "I just want to talk." The door cracked open. Barely. "Yes," she said, her voice laced with suspicion, like I'd shown up holding a flaming torch. "I got the complaint. I wanted to talk face to face. This was a birthday party, Karen. For my son. He's 7. The music wasn't loud, the kids were supervised. Why are you doing this?" She opened the door a bit wider, stepped out onto the porch. She was wearing a sweater that read HOA, Harmony Overall. "You broke the rules," she said simply. "There are processes for a reason. If everyone started throwing little parties whenever they wanted, there'd be chaos." "Chaos?" "Karen, you called the police. I was within my rights." "No, you humiliated a child and made a scene." She folded her arms. Perhaps you should have taught your child to respect the rules. That might have prevented this. That's when I realized she didn't just dislike noise. She enjoyed the power. I clenched my jaw, took a breath, and said, "You've made your point." Then I turned and walked away. But in that moment, something shifted in me. That walk down the sidewalk wasn't just a return home, it was the beginning of something else entirely. Because if Karen wanted to weaponize the HOA to ruin my son's birthday, then maybe, just maybe, I'd start looking into how the HOA operated. Who ran it? Who funded it? Who elected its officials? Maybe I'd get curious about Karen's own behavior over the years. And maybe, just maybe, I'd find a way to flip the script. But for now, the damage was still fresh. That evening, I had to explain to Tyler why someone would do something so mean. He asked if Karen didn't like him. I told him sometimes grown-ups act like kids when they don't get their way. He nodded but didn't smile. 2 days later, Tyler came home with a handmade thank you card from one of his classmates who had attended the party. The boy had drawn balloons and a cake and scribbled, "Best party ever. Sorry the mean lady ruined it." That card now lives on my fridge, but not as a memento. It's a reminder. Because the more I sat with it, the angrier I got. Not the yelling. Not the clipboard. Not even the fine. What boiled my blood was that she saw joy. Simple, pure joy, and decided it was a nuisance. She looked at kids laughing and saw a problem. She saw a family making memories and filed a violation. And that deserved justice. But not the petty kind. No, if I was going to respond, it wasn't going to be with another letter. I wasn't going to show up at her door with a counter-complaint or a neighborly guilt trip. Karen had just signed herself up for something much bigger than she expected. Because as fate would have it, while I was browsing the HOA's community website looking for information, I stumbled on something glorious. The annual HOA Community Talent Show. Held right in the local rec center gym every year. Sponsored by the HOA board. Mandatory attendance for board members. Open to all homeowners. And guess who was scheduled to host this year? Karen. According to the posted flyer. Your host for the 8th Annual Harmony Hills Neighborhood Talent Show, HOA Vice President Karen Montgomery. She wasn't just hosting it, she was headlining it. And she took it seriously, too. I found videos from last year. Karen in a sparkling vest and top hat doing dramatic readings from Little Women. One of the board members had even commented, "Karen brings such class and elegance to the stage." Oh, this was too perfect. Because while she'd made a public display out of ruining my son's birthday, she had unknowingly offered me a very public opportunity to return the favor. And I already had an idea. One that involved glitter. Rubber chickens, an oversized rainbow wig, and just a little bit of legally rented stage time. She'd wanted to be the star? I'd make her one. But not in the way she imagined. The police may have come and gone, but their presence had left something behind, something you couldn't sweep up with wrapping paper or deflate with the balloons. It was the way the laughter at the party died down after they left. The way the kids started clinging closer to their parents. The way Tyler, my son, quietly pulled off his birthday crown and tucked it under the table like he didn't feel like a king anymore. That broke me. Later that night, after we'd said our goodbyes to the last few guests and cleaned up most of the mess, Tyler sat on the porch steps holding a slice of half-eaten cake. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry, either. Just quiet in a way 7-year-olds shouldn't be on their birthday. He didn't say much, just mumbled, "I think maybe I'm not good at parties." I sat down beside him and tried to explain that what happened wasn't his fault. That sometimes adults act worse than kids. That he deserved to be celebrated. But words don't always fix bruises, especially the ones on a child's heart. And that's when something snapped inside me. Because this wasn't just about Karen and her clipboard. This wasn't just about HOA bylaws or noise ordinances. This was about cruelty. Plain and simple. The kind that hides behind official rules and smiles sweetly while it rips joy right out of someone else's hands. And the worst part? Karen knew what she was doing. She watched it happen. She wanted to ruin that day. Not because it offended her senses. Not because it broke any real rules. But because it wasn't about her. Because someone else's happiness disrupted the little kingdom she believed she ruled from her porch. And what did she get for it? A slap on the wrist from Officer Reynolds and a few awkward stares from neighbors? No. That wouldn't be enough. Not for the look on my son's face. So while my wife and I tucked Tyler into bed and told him next year's birthday would be bigger and better, I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how to make sure Karen never forgot what she did and never had the chance to do it again. I needed a plan. A good one. Not something petty. Not something that would make me look like the bad guy. No, I needed justice with flair. So I started digging. Over the next few days, I learned more about the HOA than any sane human should. I read bylaws, meeting minutes, budget allocations, public correspondence. I even created a burner email to access a private Facebook group where board members shared neighborhood concerns. It was like a digital snake pit with Karen right at the center. That's where I learned something interesting. Karen didn't just participate in the annual HOA talent show. She produced it. She coordinated the venue, approved the acts, designed the flyers, and, most importantly, she always opened the show with a performance of her own. And oh, she took it seriously. There were videos online from past years. One had her dramatically lip-syncing to Celine Dion in a feather boa. Another had her in full Victorian costume reading Emily Dickinson poems into a standing mic. Every year, she played the star. And every year, she strutted off the stage like she was on Broadway. It was her moment. Her spotlight. Her ego-fueled, applause-hungry sanctuary. And now, I had a chance to turn that spotlight around. So I submitted an act. Anonymously, of course. Under the name T. Jester. A silly, harmless name. One I knew Karen would overlook in her rush to prepare her own show-stopping performance. In my submission, I claimed to be a family-friendly clown performance duo offering light comedy, balloon animals, and crowd interaction. Nothing too flashy. Something just cheerful enough to fit the theme, but vague enough to hide what I really had in mind. I didn't even have to lie. I'd already lined up the costume rentals and prop. A friend of mine from college, who now did improv on the weekends, agreed to help me rehearse and play the part of the assistant. He owed me a favor. Now he was going to help me pull off the most poetic neighborhood revenge in HOA history. And what was the act? A skit. Titled, The Queen of Complaints. It featured a character who looked suspiciously like Karen, same hairstyle, same sweater, same oversized sunglasses, parading around a miniature stage with a whistle, clipboard, and a tendency to ruin everything joyful around her. Every time a puppet child tried to play music, laugh, or have fun, she'd blow her whistle, yell "violation," and throw a fit. But the twist? Halfway through the act, she gets promoted from HOA vice president to neighborhood clown. Her punishment? Forced to wear a red nose and perform balloon tricks in front of the very kids she tried to silence. We had jokes, music cues, audience participation, even a bit where we invited random audience members to play Pin the Complaint on the Karen. It was silly. It was theatrical. And it was devastatingly accurate. And best of all, Karen had no idea. She was too busy preparing her own act. This year she planned a dramatic reading from The Great Gatsby, complete with a fake martini glass and a velvet chaise lounge. Perfect. She wouldn't even read through the other acts until the dress rehearsal. And by then, too late. Let her taste the medicine. Let her feel what it's like to have her special day hijacked. Just like she did to my son. Because Karen didn't just ruin a party, she stomped on a memory. She took something my family was supposed to remember with laughter and turned it into something Tyler would hesitate to talk about for years. But now she was going to be the one remembered. Not as the star, but as the joke. And I was going to make sure of it. The great thing about people like Karen is that they're too proud to imagine anyone might outsmart them. That's their weakness. Karen was so obsessed with being the center of attention, she never saw the storm quietly building behind the curtain she was so desperate to stand in front of. The HOA talent show had been an annual tradition for 8 years now, though talent might have been a strong word. Most acts were dad bands, piano-playing tweens, interpretive dance routines from moms in yoga pants, and the occasional magician with a rabbit that looked half asleep. But none of that mattered to Karen. She saw the show as her personal stage, a way to remind the neighborhood that she wasn't just a rule enforcer, she was the face of Harmony Hills. And this year was no exception. 2 weeks before the event, I saw the flyer taped to our community mailbox. Sparkles, the 8th Annual Harmony Hills Talent Showcase Sparkles. Hosted by HOA Vice President Karen Montgomery. Featuring local acts, refreshments, and a special surprise performance. Special surprise performance? Oh yes, Karen. That would be me. After my anonymous submission as T. Jester was approved without a single question asked, I went into full preparation mode. My partner in clown-themed vengeance, Dave, my college buddy turned improv comic, met up with me every other evening to rehearse the skit in my garage. We practiced the lines, tweaked the timing, even filmed ourselves so we could adjust the delivery for maximum comedic and humiliating impact. The real trick, though, was nailing the costume. Karen had a signature look. Soft pink sweater, pastel skirt, tortoiseshell glasses, pearl necklace, and a tight, judgmental smirk that looked like she was constantly smelling spoiled milk. So I had a wig custom-made. I found an exact match for her cardigan at a thrift store. I even glued plastic pearls onto an old turtleneck. Add a clipboard, oversized sunglasses, and a clown nose for the finale, and the transformation was complete. Dave played Tommy, the poor neighborhood kid who just wanted to play with his friends and listen to music, until Karen the clown kept interrupting every scene with an exaggerated shriek and ridiculous complaints like, "Those children are smiling too aggressively. Violation. That music contains melodic tones. Absolutely forbidden. There are colors on that cake. This neighborhood has a beige-only policy." Each time I stormed on stage to file a fake complaint, the audience would see a bit more of themselves, or someone they knew, in the absurdity. But the climax? That's what would make it unforgettable. In the final scene, Karen the clown receives a community correction from the neighborhood, ordering her to embrace joy or be voted out forever. So, reluctantly, she dons a full clown outfit, complete with a rainbow wig and red nose, and begins dancing to a remix of Happy Birthday, the very song that triggered the police call at Tyler's party. Let's just say that it was poetic. But none of it would matter unless she actually saw it. So I made sure she did. The night of the show, the rec center was packed tighter than a church potluck. I arrived early with Dave, carrying a suspiciously large duffel bag marked props. Nobody blinked. Karen, as expected, was fluttering around the stage in full diva mode, directing lighting cues, correcting the position of folding chairs, and snapping at the teenage volunteers for putting the cookies too close to the punch bowl. She didn't even look at me. Why would she? I was just another act on her schedule, and she was far too busy preparing for her big moment, a dramatic reading from The Great Gatsby, no less. I saw her practice it once in front of a mirror and say, "So we beat on, boats against the current," with the theatrical seriousness of someone performing at the Met Gala. Perfect. Let her have her spotlight. She wouldn't even suspect the trap was already set. The show began at 6 p.m. sharp. There was a tap dancing routine from a third grader, a barbershop quartet of retirees in matching vests. A woman did spoken word poetry about her cat's emotional journey. You get the idea. Then came Karen. She swept onto the stage like royalty, wearing a flowing shawl and holding a fake martini glass, narrating Gatsby with a look that said, "You are all lucky to witness this." Some clapped politely. Others looked at their phones. And then it was time. Act 12. Jester, family clown skit. I stepped out from behind the curtain, clipboard in hand, pearls around my neck, glasses perched low on my nose, and immediately shouted, "Stop having fun immediately!" People laughed. Karen didn't. I saw her seated off to the side, blinking rapidly as she watched me storm across the stage in her outfit, pointing to invisible neighborhood children and yelling things like, "Smiling without a permit? You're done. This cake is not HOA approved, it has sprinkles. This child is playing a kazoo before 5 p.m. Every line got a bigger laugh than the last. But it was when we played the audio recording of a birthday song, just like the one she called the cops over, and I yelled, "Call the authorities, there's a celebration happening," that the audience erupted. And then came the finale. Dave walked on stage and handed me a citation, an oversized cardboard sign that read, "You have been found guilty of crimes against joy." He spun me around, put a giant red nose on my face, and crowned me with a rainbow wig. Music started, an upbeat remix of "Happy Birthday," and I was forced, with overly dramatic pretend crying, to dance and juggle rubber chickens while the audience howled. Karen? She was frozen. Mouth slightly open. Face pale. It took her a full minute to realize she was the punchline. And I made damn sure everyone else realized it too. When I bowed at the end, the room was in tears, from laughter, not sorrow. Even the barbershop quartet gave me a standing ovation. Karen stood up slowly and walked out. No speech. No dramatic exit. Just her heels clicking angrily across the linoleum floor. Some people clapped harder just for that. Karen left that stage like she'd just seen a ghost wearing her sweater, pearls, and reputation. But it wasn't a ghost. It was me. And I wasn't done yet. The moment she disappeared through the exit doors, a hush fell over the room, then a thunder of laughter rolled in again, like people had been holding it in for years. You could feel the tension melt away from the room like butter on a hot skillet. It wasn't just funny. It was relief. I had people slapping my back, parents wiping tears from their eyes. One older gentleman with a Vietnam vet cap pulled me aside and whispered, "You just did what the whole street's been wanting to do for 5 years. Thank you." Even Dave, still half in costume and trying to pry off his squeaky red clown shoes, leaned in and said, "Man, that wasn't just comedy, that was justice." But I wasn't popping the champagne yet. Not until I saw how Karen reacted in the daylight. The moment she walked out of that gym, she had two choices. Laugh it off like a good sport or go nuclear. Spoiler, she chose nuclear. The next morning, we woke up to an email from the HOA. Subject line: Misconduct at HOA Talent Show, disciplinary hearing scheduled. Attached was a blurry photo of me mid-sketch, red nose and all, with a furious write-up claiming I had intentionally impersonated and defamed a sitting HOA board member, violated decorum standards, and incited public mockery. According to the email, I was to appear at the next board meeting, mandatory attendance, or face a $500 fine and possible suspension of HOA privileges. Which, let's be honest, I could have lived with. But I wasn't about to let her walk away with the last word. So I attended the meeting. I showed up 5 minutes early in a clean button-down shirt and khakis, with a clipboard of my own in hand, purely for effect. The conference room was full. Not just board members, but neighbors. People who'd seen the performance. People who had lived through Karen's reign of HOA terror for years. You could tell something had changed. The mood was different. Karen sat at the front, arms crossed, lips pursed so tight they looked like a paper cut. She refused to make eye contact. The HOA president, Mr. Langford, a quiet man with a nervous laugh, called the meeting to order. Today's first item: the alleged misconduct at the community talent show. I stood, calm, collected. "I'd like to make a statement," I said. "And if you'll allow me, I've brought some evidence." I clicked the remote on the projector. On the screen behind me, I played 2 short clips. First, a video from the birthday party. Kids laughing, soft music playing, nothing louder than casual conversation. Second, body cam footage from Officer Reynolds, which I'd obtained through a public record request. It showed Karen calling the police, then being gently reprimanded for wasting emergency resources. Then I played the performance, my performance. Laughter broke out in the room again. Even Mr. Langford cracked a smile. When it ended, I turned to the room and said, I didn't mock Karen out of pettiness. I responded to an abuse of power. My son's birthday was ruined by a callous, unnecessary act. The community deserved a voice. Humor just happened to be the loudest one available. Karen shot up from her chair. He made a mockery of me. A hand went up from the back. It was old Mrs. Cartwright, who'd lived here since the 70s. You made a mockery of yourself, dear, she said. All that fuss over children having cake. That's not leadership. That's bitterness. Gasp. Then nods. Then murmurs of agreement. One man stood and said, The truth is, Karen, we're tired. Tired of the complaints, the fines, the letters about flower colors and welcome mats and excessive cheer during holidays. This was overdue. Another added, That clown show? That wasn't defamation. That was a mirror. And suddenly, the tone of the room flipped. Karen sat down slowly. Color drained from her face. Langford, still trying to keep things professional, cleared his throat. Well, I think we can all agree emotions have run high, but perhaps this is an opportunity for reflection. Mr. Thompson. He nodded at me. No further disciplinary action will be taken. Applause broke out. Literal, honest-to-God applause. Karen's fingers tightened around the arms of her chair. But her voice? Silent. And as people began talking among themselves, someone brought up an idea. Maybe it's time for some new board leadership. That someone was Mrs. Cartwright. And just like that, a petition started. Not 2 days later, a motion was circulating to vote Karen out of the HOA board. The performance, the backlash, the video evidence, it was all fresh in people's minds. Folks who'd been afraid to speak out for years suddenly felt brave enough to stand together. By the following week, it was official. Karen Montgomery, removed from HOA board by community vote 87-6. The 6? Probably Karen, her cats, and a cousin she once bribed with banana bread. After her removal, we didn't hear much from Karen. She kept to herself. No more letters. No more notes on windshields. No more measuring people's lawns with tape. In fact, one day I caught her in her driveway, watching as Tyler rode his bike past her house, streamers flowing behind his handlebars. He waved. She didn't. But she didn't complain either. And that was victory. The next year, when Tyler turned 8, we threw another party. This time with music, games, balloons, a magician, a taco truck, and even a little stage where Dave and I reprised our skit, updated, of course, to reflect the redemption of Clown Karen. It was a light-hearted version. No venom. Just laughter. And Tyler? He laughed harder than anyone. Because he finally had his day. And I finally had my piece.